fragile, and it's not automatic that it also helps to move the boat forward. So let us take stock today here about the progress that has been made on regional cooperation in the Balkans, but also to acknowledge the challenges and the obstacles that persist and prevent meaningful change. How can the region do more and better to strengthen cooperation? And how can the European Union, as well as the member states themselves, can do more and better to help the Balkan countries in that process? Well, I turn now to our star-studded panel, and I will first kindly invite the Prime Minister of North Macedonia, Dimitar Kovacevski, to lead us into this discussion with a keynote address. Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Poštovani dame I gospoda,
ladies and gentlemen, we made a decision today to have a shorter panel due to security reasons. First of all, let me welcome you all. And let me tell you something very important. That is that the political objective of the Western Balkans is a full-fledged membership in the European Union, because the place of all Western Balkan countries is in the EU, and regional initiatives are one of the ways of improving cooperation on the path towards full-fledged membership of the Union. All countries in the region are basically on this path, because the region today has the necessary leadership potential to make such decisions. What is necessary now is to double down on our efforts and get the necessary support on each and every plan from our European partners in order to speed up the integration process. I am emphasizing this because we've never heard clearer messages from our strategic partners from the European Union that by the year 2030 it is possible to have enlargement of the EU with Western Balkan countries. And basically now it comes down to us to move the processes along in the region. The war in Ukraine reminded Europe that on a geographic area on the European continent there is a geostrategic gap. We mustn't forget that the war in Ukraine is waged only 700 kilometers from us, sitting here today. Western Balkan countries whose European commitments are indisputable, and each and every one of the countries has a different capacity of resilience towards non-democratic tendencies coming from abroad, mainly because of the different paces of democratization of societies themselves. This geostrategic gap is an open door to the winds that are kind of rocking the already fragile Western Balkans, thus influencing the European Union itself, whose steadiness and firmness is not only in maintaining the relationships between powerful economic countries, but also in uniting both large and small countries that exist on this European space. We mustn't forget that the EU has two borders. One is the external border of the European Union, whilst the second one is the internal one, that is the border with the countries from the Western Balkans. This is the border that by 2030 we must make efforts to remove from the map. All of us, both the Western Balkans and Europe, need unity and stability in order to speak about individual and joint strategies and perspectives. And this is the first thing we must keep in mind. We are working within the Open Balkan Initiative, within the Berlin process. We are underlining the benefits from establishing this joint regional market, the recognition of diplomas, work permits, facilitated mobility of people, goods and services, but we always give advantage to the single goal of joining the European family of peoples and states. The war on the European continent kind of sounded the alarm that only a unified Europe, along with the Western Balkans, is a stable and safe Europe. Anything else is merely a part of the solution and not the entire solution that we all need. We must simulate and support in this process the closing of bilateral issues whenever necessary. because we saw that cooperation between two countries serves as motivation for greater cooperation, just as the conflict between two states is a trigger for widening misunderstandings, which is reflected in the Russian-Ukrainian war. It's a good thing that the region and Europe have the Prespa agreement as a sound model for functioning democracy that promotes resolving outstanding questions through open dialogue between the parties. The Prespa agreement responds to the concerns of nearly all countries that have similar disputes that are currently meaning identity questions, because it serves as a diplomacy model whose solution does not endanger, but to the contrary, strengthens the identity commitments and determinations important for a state and a people. From our Macedonian example, let me send out a message that it's important to have a brave and strategic leadership, because this leads to expected and desired perspectives. It was shown that political solutions are also economic solutions. That is, that difficult decisions work also for the economy in a positive light. The Prespa agreement and the commencement of the negotiations with the European Union as of last year, in the most challenging years since the World War II, in the Republic of North Macedonia, the Republic marked the highest level of foreign direct investments and the highest level of domestic investments, as well as the highest level of support to domestic companies for a new cycle of investments. The salaries have risen significantly. The minimum wage has risen by over 100% for the 5-year period. Pensions were increased between 40 to 50% compared for the same period. Undoubtedly, this is a result from the stability that we've achieved at home, and it also moves towards strengthened economic stabilities with Western Balkan countries. And the fact is, it's never been as high as it is today. But it's also due to the excellent relations that we have with the major economies of the world and in Europe, such as the German economy. And this sound cooperation was crowned yesterday with a resolution of the German Bundestag that gave a clear support of integrating North Macedonia into the European Union with a protected identity, language, and culture. This is greater recognition that the political and economic interests go hand in hand, because Germany is a major trade partner, and we cannot ask for a greater recognition than this one. By all means, this leads us to the essence of the significance of international cooperation. With joint efforts, we overcame a health crisis, and then we tackled the peak of energy economic crisis during the winter, which led to higher prices of energy, food, raw materials, impacted inflation, and threatened economies. If we didn't have sound foundations of trust, through the Open Balkan Initiative, through the Berlin process, undoubtedly we would find ourselves in a much more difficult situation than today. However, through joint work, solidarity, and support, we mitigated the consequences from these crises, and our cooperation is showing support and success. And if someone is still asking how, the answer is before us. The states in the region have political leaderships that decided to get themselves released from the chains of the past and work towards the future together today. The Berlin process is an important one because it includes all Western Balkan countries. This process includes agreements for mutual recognition of university diplomas that opened new employment possibilities and existential opportunities for potential staff and the citizens. The Open Balkan Initiative is an original idea of Serbia, Albania, and North Macedonia. The results of this initiative are measured by facts. The exports from North Macedonia to Serbia was increased by 50% last year, and towards Albania by 40%. Their exports as well towards our country was increased compared to 2019 and 2020. The green stripes of border lines, the transport elements of Kafasan and Tabanovce, have minimal wait times, and now the transport of goods, that is, import and export, has increased multiple times. A World Bank study showed that the transport on the Balkans is basically spent 70% in waiting on border crossing points, only 30% in driving. With these green lines and introducing non-tariff barriers, and streamlining supervision inspections. We facilitated and accelerated transport and increased the commerce and trade between our countries. We now have minimal waiting times for the transport companies. Also, the citizens that in the past wished to work in some of the countries of the Western Balkans, that is the open Balkan countries, had to first find an employer, then apply for a residential permit based on the job that they would get, and these wait procedures lasted several months. The right to access the labor market between these three countries has now been significantly simplified. The number of tourists, for example, from Serbia in our country in 2022, compared to with 2021, has increased by 500%. This is yet another confirmation that the excellent political relations between Serbia and North Macedonia have an impact on exchange of people, especially increasing tourist potential and exchange. The economic markets of our states are individually small markets. This helps us promote the initiative for a joint regional market. We also have an initiative on joint attracting of foreign direct investments from more developed countries. Thus, we ensure greater competitiveness on the European market, greater competitiveness before European and world investors, and we become more attractive to them. Wider in regional frame with Greece and Albania, we're already building stable relations for transport of energy. We've initiated procedures for a new gas line being built between North Macedonia and Greece, which will be linked to the LNG terminals in Greece, but also with other gas lines that is passed through our neighboring country. Also, in Albania, we're in talks for opening a new terminal that will then again be connected to these interconnectors that will pass through North Macedonia. We're also implementing a clear plan for improving the road infrastructure, both towards Bulgaria, that is the east, and the west, that is Albania. Corridor 10 has already become a part of, Corridor 8 already became a part of trans corridors as well as Corridor 10. We are building a new highway towards Albania, as well as an expressway towards Bulgaria and a railroad towards Bulgaria. And Corridor 8 is truly important for North Macedonia because it also provides access to the Thessaloniki port, but also with the Duras port and in Burgas in Bulgaria. This makes us geographically the center of the Balkans, and by investing in the infrastructure, and I'm seeing from, let's say, a bypass that is a ring road in the Balkans, this country will become a true, genuine crossroads of transport corridors on the Balkans. This, on the other hand, will be a huge input in developing the economy and elevating the standard for citizens. I think this is sufficient introduction to the debate that we'll have during this session, where we'll hear experiences from our neighbors and regional friends, because all of us together are here on the right path towards development of our countries, developing and intensifying regional cooperation. Since genuine regional cooperation is the path that makes us show regional stability. It is up to us to make focused decisions that will take us to the EU, because the challenges, as I said yesterday, are also opportunities. And I also said that our once-in-a-lifetime opportunities are here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Some follow-up questions, if I may. You referred in your speech to the fact that the messages arriving from the EU and the member states at this point are quite clear and very positive regarding the European perspective of the Balkans. And you said that basically it comes down to you, to the Balkan countries now, to deliver in order to be able to advance. So if the ball is now in your court, if I can paraphrase your introduction, I'm wondering what would be, in your opinion, one or two priorities that you should focus on, especially from a regional perspective, in order to be able to seize this geopolitical moment and advance quickly towards the EU?
Well, first, the clear messages that are coming from the EU member countries, and I would say not only the EU member countries, but also of strategic partners of North Macedonia, countries which are members of NATO, are very clear. And today, in the time of the media capillarity as we have it, and in the time of very fast communications, we do not need to repeat the messages which are coming. So yesterday we could see in a video address the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, who clearly said that they are waiting for the Western Balkan countries in the European Union. So now we have to do our homework. You know, I have always said that there are differences between politicians and leaders, because politicians care about their rating to the next elections. Mm-hmm. Leaders make decisions that affect the future, positive future, of the current and the next generations. And the political decisions which need to be made in all the countries in the Western Balkans are actually imperative. So number one is the political commitment to have the reforms and to make the necessary decisions. Number two, energy. So, you know, we have systems of energy which are coming and are derived from the old consolidated systems of Yugoslavia, which are now practically splitted and they are not consolidated. And that's why we are working together in order to ensure energy stability, energy independence, and energy diversification. And clearly we showed this winter that together with Bulgaria, together with Greece, together with Serbia and Albania, we can do it together. And even more, together with the United States, with UK, and with EU, we can do even more on the future independence and diversification of the energy supply for the region. Because when the energy is secured, then it's easier for the economy to grow. And the third one is the regional cooperation. The regional cooperation, I talked extensively in my address at the beginning of the panel, is actually what we are doing in the Berlin process, as we are all in the Berlin process. But for me, even more, I would say, hands-on is the Open Balkan, because it really proves that when something is built on a consensus, as we are doing it in the Open Balkan, then it's very easy to implement it. So that is how we managed to implement liberalization of the movement of people, goods, and so not full liberalization, but actually we managed to decrease many of the barriers. And practically when you see what we are doing in the Open Balkan, it is the same what is done in the Berlin process. That's why for our two countries it's much easier to ratify and to adapt to the Berlin process decisions and agreements. And I'm very happy that these agreements are deposited in our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which proves that when a country is solving its internal issues on a sustainable way, as we did it with the Ohrid Framework Agreement, when the country is solving its external challenges, as we did it with the Prespa Agreement and as we did it with the Good Neighborliness Agreement with Bulgaria, then the country, from a country user of peacekeeping missions, becomes a country which is factor of stability. And we need to keep this.
Right. But I mean, you definitely did a great job highlighting all the benefits and the positive outcomes of the already of the Open Balkans. At the same time, you also said that the Berlin process is important because it includes all Western Balkan countries. So I'm wondering, how do you respond to those who argue that maybe the open Balkans undermines actually the Berlin process?
I respond with facts and with empirical data. And that's why in my address I mentioned clearly the numbers which mean to the people and to the businesses. So we managed to increase by 50% the trade with Serbia, by 40% the trade with Albania. The overall trade between the three countries has increased for 25%.
But what about the other three? What about the other three?
The other three have not increased their trade because they are not part of the decrease of non-tariff barriers. Even we are thinking about tariff barriers decreasing. Then the free movement of people. You know that we have integrated the online systems for citizens registration of the three countries. So now it will be much easier to get a job in one of the three countries because, you know, this is a small region, small markets. So when we are together, we become immediately a bigger market. You know, the strength of the European Union is in the joint market. I mean, if you see Slovakia, Czech Republic, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, you see their economies. If I compare the Macedonian economy per capita before they joined, so actually, let's say in the 1990s, when they split it with the Warsaw Agreement and when we went out of Yugoslavia, so our economy was 6 to 10 times bigger than these economies per capita. Today, they have grown with triple digits. Why? Because they are part of the common market of the European Union. Right. It's a $500 billion market, and it's the richest market. Because there is a bigger market. There's the Chinese market.
Right.
But per capita, the European market is the strongest market in the world. And that's why there is a natural push of the market when you are part of it. The number of companies is growing, the number of job positions is growing, the salaries are growing, and then it was unimaginable that somebody from North Macedonia would go and work in Slovakia, and today it's common because simply the salaries are better there. So it's not because the country has developed by itself, European Union. So you take it, go down.
Right. Yes, I mean, it's true. Cooperation matters and can definitely make a difference. The question will be how can small group cooperation and cooperation on a smaller scale can then reinforce as opposed to running against the general current. But I'm sure we can come back to that discussion also with the other speakers. I would now like to bring in a video message that was kindly sent to us by the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, as a contribution to the discussion that we're having now here. Let's have a listen.
Dear friends, I am very much honored to address this year's Prespa Dialogue Forum and grateful to Minister Osmani and the government of the Republic of North Macedonia for organizing it. This year's high-level foreign policy Prespa Dialogue Forum is of particular importance as we mark the 5th anniversary since the signing of the Prespa Agreement, an agreement that stands for lasting peace, stability, and good neighborly relations in Southeast Europe. Today, the Prespa Forum Dialogue is a unique political platform where solutions are sought and where ideas are exchanged with a view to finding common answers for the benefit of all across the region. These last years have been challenging: a global pandemic, a climate emergency, an energy crisis driving inflation, all against the backdrop of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. Enlargement is the Union's strongest geopolitical tool. It remains a strategic investment in peace, security, and prosperity on the European continent. The European enlargement policy has been one of the EU's biggest and most transformative successes. Millions of Europeans have benefited from it. Enlargement is a win-win for both the EU bloc and new entering members. This month marks 20 years since the EU Western Balkans Thessaloniki summit. In 20 years, enormous energy and resources have been invested by the EU and the Western Balkans alike towards finding common ground. Promises have been made, progress had been made too, but too often it has been too slow, and there has been a lot of frustration. But where there is a will to reconcile, there will be a way forward. The Western Balkans have called for an acceleration of the EU accession process. At the European Parliament, this is also our call, and things are moving. Bosnia and Herzegovina has been granted candidate status. Kosovo citizens will no longer require a visa to travel into the Schengen area. And I hope that this year will bring further good news, because the European Union is not complete without the Western Balkans. So is widened the European family by 2030 mission impossible? I believe that it is mission long overdue, and together we must make it mission accomplished. And let me tell you that the European Parliament will maintain its unwavering support for all those who sincerely wish to become EU members, those who live by our values, who have the courage to reconcile, to reform, and to look to the future. All those can count on us. Thank you.
Drita Abazovic, Prime Minister of Montenegro, welcome. I turn to you now. We've heard from Ms. Metsola, from President Metsola, that we've made a lot of progress, but it has often been slow. And I'm wondering, what do you make of the regional cooperation initiatives to date? Have they achieved the desired results? Or are they perhaps acting, as some critics say, as a distraction from the European integration process?
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to thank the government of North Macedonia and Mitar and all the staff and the presidents who are present in Prespa for the great event and great organization. Let's try to jump on the point. Where is now our boat is going, in which direction? The problem of the Western Balkans is because we talk too much about the past. We're talking what was in 1996, 1999, 2002, I don't know, 1919, and not about what will be in 2030, 2035, 2040. And I think that if we change this approach and talk more about this vision, what we want to see in the future, I think that we really can success. But this is the two-way street. In this, let's say, wish of the EU to accept us, it's not one-way street that only Western Balkans want to join EU. I think this is the common interest. And especially after this new geopolitical situation, everybody should understand that this is the common interest. And I am not sure that the captain of the captains of the EU looking that on the same way. Okay, I am not saying that captains from the Western Balkans have the maybe best approach, but also we think that leadership of EU should understand that finally we need to open the door. We need to revive enlargement process. EU should stay attractive for the country which want to join EU. EU lose one member a few years ago. So it will be very good to revive the enlargement process. And how we can revive enlargement process? We cannot revive enlargement process without regional cooperation. Everything what my friends say, Prime Minister of North Macedonia, I agree 100%, and he talked always about the economy. He is the guy who always put the focus on the economy. But we cannot have the result in economy if we first don't have peace, stability, and trust between the Western Balkan countries. Peace, stability, trust, reconciliation, more mobility of the people, and after that, more strong institution, more promotion of rule of law, strong professional institution. After that, I think that we will make the very good visible success also in the context of the economy. Why we need regional cooperation? Because we are all together small. And I really understand that somebody is afraid from common market. Why we are afraid from common market? Our aspiration is to be in the market of 5 100 million people and we are afraid from the market of 20 million people. How is that possible? Why we think that if we are more close, we will make better results? That will not happen. What we need more flexibility in the borders. Not to change the borders, because always it's the big and let's say very problematic topic when you're talking about the borders in Western Balkans. We need more flexibility in the borders. We are a country with 25% of our GDP incomes are from the touristic sector. It's anybody in Montenegro think that it's good that to wait 3 hours in the border to go inside of the country? I think that is very, very bad thing. I think we need more flexibility, more flexibility for the goods. And the regional initiatives make something which, for the mobility, make some, let's say good results. These green lines in the borders, these are very good things. We spending a lot of time, trucks spending a lot of time waiting on the borders with the goods. And in that, we are not so competitive with another markets. So if we want to have the vision of when our boat will go for the 5 or 10 years, that vision definitely need to be EU. But before we go to EU, our behavior should start to be more European. Our behavior should start to be more tolerant for everybody in this region. This kind of, you mentioned 2 initiatives, Berlin process and Open Balkan. And it's a lot of discuss about the Open Balkan. We have 70 initiatives, regional initiatives in the region. Where is the problem?
Right.
Where is the problem to have also Open Balkan? Where is the problem? What if it's good? What is regional initiative? Regional initiative is just a tool to come to the goal. It's not the goal, but it's the tool to come to the goal. It's the tool which we want to use to go to the EU. So in that sense, I think that we need to support every single initiative which can make life of the people more easy. Not to make hard and problems to the people, but to make things more easy in economy, in everything, to see how we can go on. EU should understand that if they want to have more impact, it needs to be more investment in the region. We have the problems many times talking about the influence of the third sides, Russians, Chinese, this, which is true, more or less is true. I think it's better situation in this last period, but it's true. We need to have more concrete projects. We need to build the infrastructure. Why we need to build the infrastructure? Infrastructure is everything, because that is the access. If you have the north of Montenegro, which is just 2 kilometers far from Kosovo, and people don't have the access to go there, that is disaster. That is disaster. If we have the same situation in my hometown, when we want to make the bridge with Albania, if we want to make the road, our highway to go to the Serbia, to make the access to the people, to have the possibility to come in some fast way. And I think that political elite should think about this, not about what's happened 10, 20 or 30 years ago. I am not saying that we need to forget history and to don't say about the true what's happened in the previous time. I am not saying that. I'm not saying that. But definitely we need to change the approach. And we need to be ready not to everything to calculate with the support of public on election, because I think that in Western Balkan people are a little bit tired from that kind of politics. We need to just impact with some new values and to definitely move the focus to the economy and the progress. And I am sure that all these crises that we have last year, like energy crisis, all these countries, I can talk in name of Montenegro, but I think that more or less all these countries manage pretty well. Manage pretty well. Right. Just to say some facts which are almost incredible. The inflation in the first quarter in Montenegro is the second in the Europe, second lowest in the Europe. Only Belgium is better. The GDP in first quarter is the second Second with the percentage in the Europe after the Iceland. Second in comparison with every single country. And I think that this is good. But what we don't need the problems in the region. I think that the idea of to have the conflict, the idea to have the dialogue, to have the cooperation, it's very easy to choose. And let's say, I invite everybody, every side, to forget that politics from the 90s, to go out of this virus of 90s, and to see the future of this region in the EU binding context in the good cooperation. And to conclude for this first intervention, I think that it will be very good if we can have the common promotion. Dmitry saying about one big project which is connected with the energy. I will say in the name of our government, it will be very good to have common promotion on touristic, let's say for the touristic market in US altogether of Western Balkan. Or somebody think that small Montenegro or small North Macedonia or Bosnia can do that alone. Why we are not going together and represent all our resources together and don't care too much will people go to Skopje or go to Podgorica or go to Sarajevo, because in the end of the day, when they will discover the region, they will go everywhere and it will be good for everybody.
Yes, thank you very much, Prime Minister. It's a very interesting suggestion. You mentioned the importance of infrastructure and of the economy. Of course, we know that in the Berlin process, the connectivity agenda already includes many of such ideas. So I'm wondering, where are we with that initiative? I mean, is it a question of implementation? Because certainly what you have mentioned has been taken up in the context of the Berlin process. And then, of course, you also mentioned that it is very important to have peace and stability in the region and trust. And I'm wondering whether you think the Berlin process is the appropriate framework to deal with bilateral issues, which we know it's a desiderata, it's a goal of the Berlin process, but where we also know the progress has been very slow.
That's the key problem. So Berlin process started 10 years ago. And we are still talking about similar topics. I am not saying that we did not make progress. I only think that we can make more. Altogether, we can be more successful. This is about the infrastructure. You know, everything is dependent by administration. Administration killing the progress in Western Balkan. And I think that we need to see what are the possibilities to be more faster in the implementation of different kind of projects. We now have the Western Balkan Fund, which is 20 billion for all countries, which is good, but it's still not used enough. And I think that in the next period we will change this. I want to just share the positive thing that after one meeting in New York, when we went all together with Mr. Borrell, that was the first time I was in the meeting, when we all together, 6 Balkan countries, have the same request. That was the support for the energy crisis. And we come to that goal. So when we all together, 6 of us, 6 countries, advocating one thing, we're coming to the goal. When we coming and speaking bad about each other and fight each other in the meetings, this is the problem. About the infrastructure, we need, from my point of view, to cut a little bit procedures and to go more faster in the providing of the cash flow for the important projects. That will make the impact of EU, that will make the positive impact to the citizen, and people will start to think in different way when they will see that concretely it's happened something in the country.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. I turn now to Majlinda Bregu, Secretary General of the Regional Cooperation Council. Welcome. Thank you for accepting the invitation. One question for you would, as a follow-up to what we have heard, would probably be whether we you think we need some form of institutionalization or organizational framing so that we improve delivery on the initiatives that have been achieved, have been taken, and the agreements that have been struck in the Berlin process? And is there a role there maybe for RCC?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we need additional institutions on trying to forge the regional cooperation. We have enough, even more than enough, of organizations dealing, a proliferation of organizations dealing mostly with the main and the core subject of regional cooperation. There are a lot of individuals dedicated to working not only in the organizations in the region, but from the think tankers like yourself and your peers, or public administration. So there is already an army of people that can really make this or the change quite viable. What we need is more political willingness. What we need, if I can quote former President Roosevelt on the boat and sail, we need to set sail to reach a port. We don't need to tie at the anchor. We need to sail, not drift. That's the most important thing, even for the regional cooperation. And I think that until now, we have been trying, well, we all know and are aware that there are a lot of problems in this region. We are all aware that usually the commitments run first, then the strategies and papers are well prepared. But when it comes to the implementation, there the problem starts. But on the other hand, we should acknowledge that the regional cooperation managed as a mantra during all these years to center the cooperation among the countries of the region that once were fighting with each other. To see that there is a clear perspective and citizens of the region accept easier that the regional cooperation is quite an important process for them, and they do believe and put their faith and trust year by year more in the process of regional cooperation. And it is not by chance that we see every single year that there is an increase in the citizens' perception when it comes to the role that the regional cooperation or good neighborhood relations, which is a term that I like more frankly than the regional cooperation. Good neighborhood relations means that you should be in good relations with your neighbor, because the neighbor is the first door that you knock whenever you have a problem. It happens like that in everyday life, and it happens like that in the everyday life of politics and countries. So that is what the regional cooperation brought into the perspective in the Balkans. And that, although through a lot of difficulties, a lot of, let's say, achievements that we are all cheering these days. So the Prime Minister Kovacevsky mentioned the 3 famous agreements now that were endorsed last year. We are still working on those. But those agreements, as the President Milanovic said in the previous panel, are all political agreements. Is politics in there? You can't start doing anything without that commitment. And it is because of the lack of the political willingness that those agreements finalized perfectly, as much as perfect could have a sense in the documents, but finalized and negotiated perfectly by us, we're just staying in there and sleeping for 3 years because of the biggest dispute and the tinderbox still present in the region, the dialogue Kosovo-Serbia. Yeah. So here we are today, we have 3 agreements, and we are just looking forward to see the day of the implementation of these agreements. Yeah. What are these agreements bringing? Not some additional documents. It means that for every student who would like to remain in this region, their diplomas can be easily recognized. For a student from Podgorica, if he would like to recognize his diploma because he thinks he can find a job in Tirana, he doesn't or she doesn't have to go and run and pay from 300 to 500 euros plus 2 or 3 weeks of bureaucracy in there, which is a lot because this region, as we are all saying every day, is being emptied from youngsters. And it's costing to us a loss in terms of costs each year, from roughly 840 million euros to somehow 2.5 billion euros because of the youngsters that are leaving, because of the professionists that are leaving. So that's why this agreement is important. It's not important only because it tested the willingness of 6 leaders from the Western Balkans to sign and endorse that agreement. Or like the agreement on the ID cards.
Yeah.
And here I'd like to stop a bit. When the agreement on ID cards, freedom of movement with ID cards initiated, or was initiated, it came out as a conclusion from the Southeast Cooperation Process Summit in Sarajevo. Why I'm saying and re-mentioning Sarajevo? Because the biggest chunk for this agreement was to remove the visa barriers between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo. So it was quite important that time for all of us that that agreement was sealed and put into the conclusions when Sarajevo was sharing the CCP. And that's how we embarked all together to make this story happen. Because day by day, the number of Kosovar citizens living in Bosnia-Herzegovina who still have their families living in Kosovo, the number of the refusal of visas was increased. And we reached a moment when 2 out of 3 persons who were applying for a visa, a Bosnian visa, Kosovar citizens, the visa was being refused to them. And while speaking of regional cooperation, better economic integration, connectivity, and so on, how could you really just maintain the spirit of these agendas high, where among 18 million people, you have some of them who cannot visit each other freely? So that was the sense, the political sense of that agreement. And we are still looking forward, although that was not pretty much welcomed or well understood by somebody in the region at the beginning. We are still looking forward for all the leaders of the region, and especially for the ones who have a problem existing, Bosnians and Kosovars ones, to really make all for this agreement to start the implementation. Because it's important for the citizens. It's not important only for the sake and the mantra of the regional cooperation process.
Yes, thank you very much. One follow-up question. You mentioned citizens and you mentioned the lack of implementation. I'm wondering whether you think that citizens should be more involved in the Berlin process, if civil society should be involved more than it is currently informed for regular consultation, for information sharing, whether this would help the implementation process, or whether maybe we need external mechanisms to be set up that would monitor, would keep an eye on the progress that is being done or not on all these initiatives and achievements.
Corina, without repeating myself, this might be a question for Berlin, not for myself or the RCC or us that lead the regional organization. Sure. What I can say is whenever there is willingness and there is a chance, and at least from our side, we have committed ourselves on that, to listen, contribute, work closer with the civil society and all the other stakeholders of these processes, we are ready to do that. But again, aside the repeating messages, I still believe that this process will be successful only when 2 big clouds will be merging with each other. The support that comes from the citizens of the region and their consciousness on the necessity of regional cooperation, and the cloud of politicians as well, to do everything that is possible to maintain this spirit of high regional cooperation or good neighborhood relations. Because both prime ministers here, and even yesterday, what we heard most is about difficult moments that time after time we all feel and face here in the region. And it looks like we always come year by year, not only to the Prespa Forum, but to every panel that we meet together, and we keep repeating the same messages. All of these messages are right. The problem is that at the very end of the day, like the Berlin summit coming in October time, we need to show some deliverables. And this doesn't speak only on the credibility of the process itself, but it speaks on the credibility of people. Leaders, the ones who have a political mandate, and the credibility on the other side of the EU, who is anchoring and, let's say, chairing this process. We all know in the Balkans, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that's the most important thing. But on the other side, we all are witness that we have grown all of us together in this process of European integration or good neighborhood relations. So we know what is good for the region. Politicians get a mandate to implement whatever is good for the region, whatever the voters ask them. And we all together can just prepare the tapestry or the carpet for that. So we are all contributors. With due respect, the responsibility goes to the leaders. We can be hell-bent, all of us. We can invent the best agendas in the world, get models from everywhere. But if those are not implemented from the public administrations and from the countries themselves, then what's the sense of that?
Sure, but sometimes the public can put some pressure on the political level to develop that will. And if I just think of the Berlin process, of course we have the civil society forum that is in place, but discussions tend, at least from where I stand, to look like they're taking place in silos. You have civil society discussing things, and you have high-level government people discussing things, and there's very little interaction. So maybe more can also be done in terms of the process of how things are organized to hopefully lead to that political will. But at this point, and because we're approaching very fast the end of our discussion, I want to check if there's any comments or burning questions. I might be able to take one, maximum two from the public. Okay, there is one question. I will take that, and then we will close. Yeah, I think it's Milena.
Thank you, Milena Lazarevic, CEP Belgrade. My question is actually for all the panelists. How do you assess the appropriateness, the usefulness, and the possibility of a possible merger between the Open Balkan Initiative and the Common Regional Market?
Yeah. Okay. Shall we go the other way around? Yeah.
From there?
Yes.
Melinda can say.
Yes, Melinda, can you start? Yeah, just to change it.
They touched you in your position.
Because we haven't heard you also on this issue, yeah.
Okay, as far as we speak, Open Balkans is above my paycheck. I don't have a role, like RCC doesn't have a role in the Open Balkans initiative. We have always been invited as observers, and definitely I think that in this region, as I said, it's always great to keep an eye open and all ears open to follow carefully all the initiatives that are present. If you ask about merging both initiatives, I have to say yes, the agendas are already merged. Whatever happens, the Prime Minister Kovachevsky said that, whatever happens in or as part through, as well as whatever preposition you'd like to use, in the Open Balkans initiative, it is written and part of the action plan of the Common Regional Market. The difference that we all acknowledge is that the Open Balkan initiative, only 3 members of 6 are participating, while at the Berlin process are 6 altogether. And this region, considering that we are already pretty small markets, and within pretty small markets, it is legitimate for a market as well to compete with another market when it comes to foreign direct investments. No one can tell to North Macedonia, you shouldn't accept a big German investor because we are in the process of Common Regional Market or Open Balkans, because that's competition is the basic of trade and economy. But on the other hand, we know the necessity that we have to be bigger together. Otherwise, then we cannot be so relevant. So I'm just last note. I'm coming from Frankfurt, where a room full of businessmen, business community was present in there. And I was the only one from the Balkans in the panel. We were discussing about the sustainability, digital solutions, helping the economy, and so on. And we were discussing afterwards, I was the only one, anytime, trying to bring the discussion to the Western Balkans, where everybody else was mentioning Yerevan, India, so bigger markets. But how can you lobby or pitch on a small market if you cannot pitch, or it's worthwhile to pitch on a bigger market? So that's the sense. If you really would like us, RCC, or if any of the leaders or all of them together would like RCC to take care and follow closer to the open Balkans, we can discuss it further. Until now, it hasn't happened.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm giving the floor for final words on this to Prime Ministers, but maybe to enlarge it a little bit, because you've already spoken quite a bit on the open Balkans. I'm wondering whether thinking of the next phase of the common regional market, and maybe thinking, for instance, of the single market and access to the single market would be a way to differentiate a little bit more between the two initiatives. Just a reflection point, maybe, if you want to incorporate it in your response.
This is not the problem, but this is the challenge of many panels which I participate, and we're talking about the same thing, but with the different names. This is. So merging of the Berlin process and open Balkan, yes. Why we have the Berlin process? To have better cooperation. How we can come to better cooperation with the regional market, with more project in infrastructure. This is very simple. So everything which go in that direction, yes, merging, not to have two, to have one, but of course inclusive initiatives, of course open for the 6 states, and the open Balkan always say it's open for the 6 states. So yes, I am for that merging. About this, the market, we talk a lot. This is the good example. People talking about the India, people talking about Asia, people talking about the new big countries. We are all together less than 20 million people, all together. And now we should say, no, we don't want to make the common presentation because maybe some investors will go to the North Macedonia, not to Montenegro. But where is the problem? If North Macedonia doing well, we will do well. Positive news, every positive news on the region have the positive impact of every country. Every negative situation have the negative impact on every country. It's very easy to understand. And from my point of view, okay, I am the, let's say, younger politician, new generation politician. I cannot understand the people which in a globalized world speaking with so much passion about protecting of the open state and the protecting of the state, the national interest of every single of 6 states in Western Balkan is to make the open society. This is national interest of every single state in the Western Balkan. If we make that, I think that we can be the positive example in the level of all Europe, including comparison with the EU country. Can be very attractive area in comparison with the EU. So I'm supporting the merging and supporting every kind of cooperation, but in concrete things, not in the words, not only in the words and say yes, 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 and day after nobody doing nothing on that, but to make something concrete for the citizens.
Results matter. Sure. Thank you very much. Prime Minister Kovacevski, if the open Balkans is open, are you trying to convince the other 3 to join in what you're doing?
Well, I would like to put another perspective. The goal is full-fledged membership in the European Union for all the countries from the Western Balkans. Some of the countries are more advanced on this road. Some of the countries are less advanced on this road. When we say open Balkans or Berlin process, I mean, if you take a record from this panel, you will notice that you mentioned Berlin dozens of times. You know, Berlin is a beautiful city. I have worked there for some time. It has the best museums, great people, great restaurants, great economy. The problem is that Berlin is more than 1,000 kilometers away from here. So Berlin is not the solution for the challenges on the Balkans. So we need to have political leadership to work together. You see, more than 1 hour, we are talking here about cooperation while we have a problem on 100 kilometers to the north. And nobody's mentioning it. Nobody's mentioning it. Why? We are talking about Berlin. So Berlin is going to solve the problem. No, here has to be solved the problem. What's the problem? When two countries in a small region have their bilateral dispute, it's not a bilateral problem. It's a problem for the region. When a tourist from England, Stuart is here, wants to choose a tourist destination, do you think that this tourist will choose Montenegro because it's only 100 kilometers from a place which is on a news with a bad news? No. He will choose Tenerife. He or she will choose Alanya and Antalya in Turkey. Will not choose the region. The solution is here. And we have to talk openly about the problems and make the proper decisions. It was enough of looking in the past.
But would it have helped?
So, when you're talking about merging initiatives, these initiatives, in essence, are the same. They are based on the 4 freedoms of Europe.
Yep.
They are not political, but they are integrative, in essence, economic, because the European Union was built on economy.
Sure.
Why? Because they wanted to build stronger economies after the Second World War. This is how the European Union was built. Because the name of the European Union was not European Union. It was economic community in the beginning.
Yes.
And what we need to improve here? Cooperation. What is the problem of the Berlin process? The problem of the Berlin process is that there is always one country which, because of its internal political dynamics, is blocking all the agreements for all the other 5 countries. The difference with the Open Balkan is that here we agree what we want to implement, and then we simply implement it. So if you take from a time perspective what is to be implemented in the Berlin process, it's actually the same things which are already implemented in the Open Balkan. Why? Because Open Balkan functions without internal political dynamics. And then I see some stupid politicians which are saying, you know, how can Open Balkan exist? Because there is no border between Serbia and Albania. I mean, imagine. Then how can European Union exist? Because where is the border between Greece and Portugal?
Yeah.
Where is the border between Bulgaria and Sweden?
Right.
I mean, see what kind of politicians you have on the Balkans. They would find anything, some stupidity, not to have cooperation between the countries. Imagine if somebody in Germany would say, you know, this European Union is, you know, not everybody have borders between themselves. And the biggest paradox is that we were the only countries that didn't have borders for 50 years. And now we are the only countries that have borders.
Yeah.
So these guys which are sitting here in the first row, coming from Germany, from France, they had borders. Now they don't have borders and we have borders. You know, when they had borders, we didn't have borders.
Right.
And now they are giving us help,
Right.
IPA funds for better border control. I mean, they give me money to put on borders, you know. This is a paradox.
Sure. And you're working very hard to get into the European Union.
We have to talk about the problems. We have a challenge in the north.
Sure.
So this has to be solved. And we don't need these crazy borders. This is stupidity. Because the borders, what is the customs between the customs rate between the countries on the Balkans? Do you know?
The custom what?
The custom rate.
No.
No, it's 0.
Is there?
So why do you need a border?
Right.
For a corruption. The borders on the Balkans are only source of corruption and nothing more.
Yeah.
Only source of corruption.
Yeah.
And I can finish with this.
Thank you.
They need to put the border again.
Yeah.
They give us funds to put more borders.
Yeah, I understand. And also, you're working very hard to get into the European Union, where borders will have to vanish anyway. So it is contradictory what you're...
It's contradictory,
yes,
you know.
absolutely. But I'm just wondering, would Kosovo, being part of this open Balkans, would have helped with the problem that we're having a couple kilometers, 100 kilometers from here. This is the question, because you mentioned European cooperation as having furthered political cooperation. So this is, I guess, the questions of those who are doubting the open Balkans.
You know, the more you discuss questions which are directed towards the future, because when you talk about cooperation in any sense, then you talk about the future, you don't talk about the past. Then it immediately has a positive effect on the overall political relations between the countries. Mm-hmm. So the more Serbia and Kosovo discuss this type of issues, yeah. And I have experienced it in the case of North Macedonia and Bulgaria.
Right.
When we discussed with the government of Kirill Petkov, yeah. About projects which are directed towards the future, yeah. Education, infrastructure, economy, tourism, transport, then we were able to find a solution to start the negotiations for North Macedonia. Yeah. We kept our identity. Then Bulgaria insisted on having the Bulgarian, part of the Bulgarian people which live in North Macedonia, these are 3,500 people, to be part of the preamble of the constitution. So it was a fair deal. Sure. And it was submitted by the 27 countries of the European Union. So if you talk about the future, about what people need, then there is a way to find a solution. If they talk about the past, they will never find a solution. Absolutely. So to finalize, the biggest stupidity on the Balkans are the borders.
We are going to leave it on that note. Thank you very much to all of you for being so frank and open in your interventions, and thank you also for our participants for staying a little bit over time. Please join me in thanking our speakers for their contributions.